to take a listen to the words from my friend Tom, and he's going to teach us a little bit in a short version of what happened in the life of Moses Brown.
Hi, my name is Tom, and I'm from Boston. Some of my good friends around here still tell me I talk funny. So I'll start by saying that I told Roger, don't screw it up. Everybody knows Abe Lincoln. But there's no way I'm going to screw this up, because I'm willing to bet nobody knows who Moses Brown was. As I go through my little talk here, I'd like to give you a few key words to think about as I go through this. Some of the key words I'm going to talk about are rum, the Atlantic Triangular slave trade, the ship Sally, the Quakers, and Moses Brown. Let's start with rum. After rum's development in the Caribbean, the drink's popularity spread to colonial North America. To support the demand for the drink, the first rum distillery in the British colonies of North America was set up in 1664 on present-day Staten Island, Boston, Mass. And a distillery 3 years later. The manufacture of rum became early colonial New England's largest and most prosperous industry. New England became a distilling center due to the technical metalworking, cooperage skills, and abundant lumber. The rum products produced there was lighter, more like whiskey. Rhode Island rum even joined gold as an accepted currency in Europe for a period of time. Estimates for rum consumption in American colonies before the American Revolutionary War had every man, woman, and child drinking an average of 14 gallons of rum each year. To support this demand for the molasses to produce rum, along with the increasing demand for sugar in Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, a labor source to work the sugar plantation in the Caribbean was needed. A triangular trade was established between Africa, the Caribbean, and the colonies to help support this need. The exchange of slaves, molasses, and rum was quite profitable, and the disruption to the trade caused by the Sugar Act in 1764 may have even helped cause the American Revolution. In the slave trade, rum was also used as a medium of exchange. For example, the slave Venture Smith, whose history was later published, had been purchased in Africa, 4 gallons of rum plus a piece of calico. I looked up calico. Calico is a piece of canvas-like cloth. The popularity of rum continued after the American Revolution, with George Washington insisting on a barrel of Barbados rum at his 1789 inauguration. So that's rum. So let's talk about a minute about this Atlantic slave trade triangular network. The best known triangular trading system in the transatlantic slave trade operated in the 16th and early 19th centuries, carrying slaves, cash crops, and manufactured goods between West Africa, Caribbean, and the American colonies. And the European colonial powers with the Northern British, especially New England, sometimes taking over the role of Europe. The use of African slaves was fundamental to growing colonial cash crops, which were exported to Europe. European goods, in turn, were used to purchase African slaves, which were then brought on the sea lane west from Africa to the Americas, to the so-called Middle Passage. A classic example in the colonial molasses trade, sugar, this is often it's the liquid form molasses from the Caribbean, was traded to Europe or New England, where it was distilled into rum. The profits from the sale of sugar were used to purchase manufactured goods, which were then shipped to West Africa, where they were bartered for slaves. The slaves were then brought back to the Caribbean to be sold to sugar planters. The profits from the sale of slaves were then used to buy more sugar, which shipped to Europe, restarting the cycle all over again. The first leg of the triangle was the European port of to Africa, in which ships carried supplies for sale and trade. That was the Middle Passage. In New England, what interests me, I've found this abolitionists up in New England. New England benefited from the trade as many merchants from New England, especially the state of Rhode Island, replaced the role of Europe in the Triangle. New England also made rum from the Caribbean sugar molasses, which shipped to Africa as well as within the New World. Yet the Triangle trade is considered in relation to New England was a piecemeal operation. No New England traders are known to have completed a sequential circuit of the full Triangle, which took a whole calendar year. That's that. So, the Sally is part of this this is an interesting story about Sally. In 1764, a 100-ton brigantine called the Sally ship embarked from Providence, Rhode Island to West Africa on a slaving voyage. The ship was owned by Nicholas Brown and Company, a Providence merchant firm run by four brothers, Nicholas, John, Joseph, and good old Moses Brown. The Sally's voyage was one of roughly 1,000 transatlantic slave ventures launched by Rhode Islanders in the colonial and early national period. This was one of the deadliest ship crossings. One of the 196 Africans acquired by the ship's master, at least 109 perished. And all of these records, surprisingly, are at a university we might know of, called Brown University. So who was this, just studying one line on who the Quakers was and how I found Moses. Moses was a Quaker. And the first Quakers lived in the mid-17th century, and I'll just give you one line of what the Quakers were. In the past, Quakers were known for the use of thou as an ordinary pronoun. Their refusal to participate in war, plain dress, refusal to swear oaths, opposition to slavery, and teetotalism. That's what Quakerism was all about. And they all went on to start a lot of financial institutions like Barclay and Lloyd's and C&J Clark in Providence. So that's the Quakers. So what happened was Brown, who he was born in 1738. He died in 1836. His father had made all the money before him on the slave trade. He was a prosperous merchant. What happened was the family firm was active in distilling rum. They owned an iron furnace and took part in a wide variety of merchant activities, including sponsoring the ill-fated and notorious voyage of the slave ship Sally in 1764, which I just mentioned. So his father died in 1739, way back then. And Brown's wife, what happened was Brown actually went on to have 3 wives. And he was having a big fight with his brother John. Because what happened was, by the time of the American Revolution, Moses Brown had emerged as the most important anti-slavery leader in Rhode Island. He was instrumental in the enactment of Rhode Island's great Gradual Abolition Act of 1784, as well as the passage of a 1787 state law prohibiting Rhode Islanders from participating in the slave trade. And we know our history back in this time in history, the colonies were really getting going. When the state proved unable or unwilling to enforce the latter law, Brown founded the Providence Abolition Society, an organization dedicated to bringing prosecutions against those who continued to traffic in the slaves illegally. He also contributed to the passage of federal laws in 93 and 1800 prohibited Americans from trafficking slaves to ports outside the United States. So as Moses emerged as the slave trader's most passionate critic, his brother John emerged as the trader's most vocal defender. The dispute between the brothers was initially confined to private letters, but it burst into the public in 1789 following the founding of the Providence Abolition Society and a series of newspapers. So that's how they worked it out, and Moses went on to really be a Quaker and an abolitionist, and all of the monies that he made went to Brown University. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. A big round of applause for Tom, better known as Moses Brown.